without further ado, I want to introduce my mom. It gives me great pleasure to introduce my mom, Elsie Fetterman, to you. My mom has been both my best role model and a cheerleader to her children. Mom grew up in Danielson, Connecticut, moved to Mansfield, Connecticut in 1966, and then to Amherst, Mass in 1979. Mom had 4 children in 6 years, with both my brother and I carefully planned to be born during summer vacations since she taught high school. Mom still looks at the glass half full at 93 years young. Sorry. Her first topic will be about what it was like to work outside the home in the 1950s and beyond. Mom always said every woman is a working woman, so she always defined it as working outside the home. During the second half of this JETI talk, Mom will talk about how she stays young despite her chronological age of 93. I will go ahead and interview my mom, and then during the last 10 minutes, we will open it up to questions. And that's when I'll probably go back to off this screen and being able to see all of you. So, Mom, first question. What year did you start working, and did you work full-time or part-time? And it doesn't have to be your first teaching job. It can be when you first started working.
Well, as those of my family are here, maybe some of you know that my parents owned a hardware store in Danielson. And I learned accounts receivable and accounts payable. I was there about 7 years old. I was weighing nails, and one time I was at Blumenthal's hardware store, and my father and mother had the store for 52 years. And I saw a man walk in the store, and he had a briefcase, and I thought he was a salesman. And he said, "Do you work?" And I said, "Oh, yes." I said, "I know about copper tubing, and I know about accounts receivable, and I make deposits." And how old are you? I'm 8 years old, and I know uncertainty. I know about milking machine parts and everything. I don't understand one word of Jewish, not one word of Yiddish or anything. My father sees me talking to him, and he yells something, yells at me like, like, "Get out of here," but in Yiddish. He was a labor inspector. And he said, "Why don't you go after those families on the farm? Those kids have to work. Those are kids that are working." And my father must have had a couple hundred bicycles in the store, and I wanted one of them. He says, "Well, I pay you $1 a week." He said, "That bicycle's $39. So I'll give you a time payment book. And after 39 weeks, the bike will be yours." And I said, "You have a few hundred bucks." He said, "You think that God took them from the sky and put them in my store?" He said, "I have to pay for them." He said, "He's afraid," but he said, "And do you know what overhead? You see those clerks? Who do you think pays all the clerks here? Who pays? You think that God just heats up the store and everything? That's overhead. I didn't charge you any overhead. I didn't charge any overhead for you." So
Mom, so when you were 8 years old, you worked part-time because you went to school. And then when you were in college, you came home on the weekend, so you were working then. All right, so that was your first job. And then my next question is, tell me a story about your first job or favorite memory of your early career. So is there a favorite memory you had when you were teaching?
Well, I think it's the satisfaction that I have from teaching. I later went into administrative work, and I prefer teaching any day of the week to being an administrator. And I think the relationship that I had with the students has carried over to today, where I am surrounded by students here in Amherst. I think it's the relationship that I have with young people that I enjoy very, very much.
And when you had that first teaching job, your professional career, what was your salary, and describe any fringe benefits that you had?
Well, my salary was $46 a week. And I paid Eva, the babysitter, I paid her $30, which leave me $16. And she didn't want to have to pay her Social Security. And so that, but I did build up years of the advantage I built up some years of service later on. And then I went to the congressman, St. Ange, and I said, I don't have that $30 a week. You should have some legislation so that I can deduct it because I don't have it to spend. He said, I'll never, never do it. You belong at home. That's where you belong. You don't, you should be at home, and I'll never do that. And I remember Dr. Loxo was our doctor. He went on vacation, and Dr. Shadia was Catholic, and and so we, Daddy and I wanted to get my 3 years of teaching and 3 years teaching certificate before we started a family. And he said, I won't even, he said, I would never tell you anything about birth control. He said, after all, women are supposed to have babies. So those are, but the fringe benefit was that I built up 30 years of service in Connecticut. And when I was 52 years old, I had 30 years at 52.
That was fantastic. What educational background or professional training did you have before starting your first job? And did you receive on-the-job training?
The job. Well, I first got a bachelor's degree, but then they had to be fully certified and to have a master's degree. And I had student teachers all the time, and they don't pay you, but they'll give you tuition. And so the superintendent said, you know, if you don't use these tuition credits, he said, I would give them to my wife. I said, well, I earn them, I'm going to school. So I went to school 3 nights a week for 7 years to get my doctorate. But I did, in the meantime, I got my bachelor's, I got a master's, I got a 6th year, and then I got my PhD. And then they had a reunion at the University of Connecticut, and they asked everybody to put in what year you graduated. I said, well, what year should I put in? Well, put in the last year. I said, I graduated so many times. So I put in 1966 on my name tag. As a lawyer and romantic by the name of Harry Gaucher. He said, we were in Miss Cope's government class, weren't we, in 1945? And I said, yeah. And it was like a cocktail party. He said, oh, well, don't feel too bad that it took you 21 years to graduate. So I tell everyone, I'm a slow learner. It took me 21 years.
But you also, when did you, all right, so what year did you start your doctorate? Do you remember?
1960.
Okay, so I was a year old. So you had four kids with between what, 1 and 6. So yeah. Job, do you want to talk a little bit about what your job history was starting? Well, we know your first job was in the hardware store, but then after that it was Plainfield High School was your first job?
It was Killingly High. My mother died in 1948, and I had been taking extra subjects. I didn't want my father to know that while I was there, I wanted to take extra credit. So in those days, they didn't graduate in the middle of the year, and they didn't take time off. So the home economics teacher resigned, Mary Ann Hanukkah, in December of 1948, Christmas, and they needed a certified home economics teacher to start January 1, 1949. And they called UConn, and they said, by coincidence, we only have one person who's fully certified who graduates in January, and she happens to be from Danielson. So the superintendent of schools was Vernon Hayes, and he saw my father. It's a small town, Danielson, and so everybody knows everything in Danielson. And he saw my father, and he said, we have a vacancy, and we see Elsie's graduating. And my father said, no, she doesn't graduate till June. So my father called me up, and he said, what's this? He said, you're fully certified. I said, Dad, Maya's only 7 years old. I said, yeah, 4 brothers at home? I said, I want to stay in school. He said, listen, your mother just died, and there's a job, and so but I continued my studies just the same, and your father and I lived at the house until about Vita was born. But I wanted to go to school, and I wanted to go on. I always wanted to pursue my education, and so I I still study. I still do a lot of studying and research. As a volunteer now, I do a lot of volunteer work.
So I'm going to jump to another question. How did you balance your job with your family life, volunteer work, hobbies, other interests? And did that balance change over time?
I could never, ever have done any of this without your father. Your father said, you've always wanted to go on to school, and I'm going to do everything I can to help you. And when I got my PhD, I said, John Dempsey, who was from Putnam, was the governor, and we knew him pretty well. And I told John at that my graduation, I said, my husband is the one who belongs here, not me, because he was the one who picked you up from Hebrew school and scouts and just schlepped everybody everywhere and did whatever had to be done. And all of you pitched in. I remember Robin Pollock came to visit David. She was at UConn, and she said, your mother lets you in her kitchen? My mother in Brookline, my mother won't meet. So David, your brother, replied, he said, this kitchen belongs to anyone except my mother. And so I think a lot of it was that all of you, I remember Roy went to Nancy Craig's when he was like 5 or 6 years old, and she was so impressed that he got clean sheets the next day and made it up. Because I would say, who sleeps in this bed? Oh, you do. Oh, I guess, well, you know, this is where the sheets are. And, you know, you did all the laundry, Judy.
Yeah, that's for sure. Let's see. Is there anything you wish you had done differently in your career? Are there any job opportunities or careers you would have liked to explore?
Well, I had been offered a job at Cornell in Southern Illinois, but as you know, your father had a business. And it wasn't until I was offered a job at Southern Illinois University. I was offered jobs all over the country. As a matter of fact, Judy, you already know that summers from Memorial Day to Labor Day, I taught at different colleges. I taught consumer education to teachers. And I would say, I want to make sure that my classes are in the morning so we could go, go all over the country. And you, in Wyoming, University of Wyoming, you did high altitude cooking.
Mom, this JETI talk isn't about me. It's about you. What about the TV show?
I had a television show in New Haven for 15 years called Speaking for the Consumer. And I did that while I was at the University of Connecticut, and it was on Rhode Island. And I also wrote a column for the Hartford Courant. And I think the job I really liked the best was at UConn. And then I was chair of the Governor's Consumer Council, both Republican and Democrat. Metzger had appointed me, and so did Ella Grasso. Those names would not be, it would be familiar in some of you, but not. And I was very happy. I loved it. And I worked with low-income families, community action agencies. And one time they could find a meeting room that with all the agencies. I said, well, you can come to our house in Mansfield. So one of the men from the community renewal team in Harvard said, well, make sure you have Jack Daniels there. I said, oh, what community action agency is he with? I didn't know. What did I know about Jack Daniels? If you talk to me about Manischewitz wine, I mean, but they said, you'll find him in any package store. So your father went in and he said, you can't afford your low-income friends. He said, this will cost with $7.50, you know, and that was way back when.
What about when you were up for tenure at UConn and what they told you had to do?
Well, Helen Chambers, who had a master's degree, said, first of all, she never would have hired me on the faculty because I did all of my work at UConn rather than somewhere else. And she wants me to go away to Cornell for a semester and take a leave of absence. Mm-hmm. So I got to Cornell and they had me teaching consumer class. And then she said, besides, you need to publish. Well, in co-op extension, we did informal publications to get the research out. I said, oh, nobody ever told me they're supposed to write a book So I did 7 books that year when I was at Cornell. I was there. So I did published 7 consumer books that were used in schools.
What about when we went to Kentucky?
Oh, Murray State University is the Bible Belt.
And the year was 1966?
1970.
Okay.
1970 in Murray, Kentucky. And I've never hid it from anyone that I am Jewish and our family is Jewish. And these were not, they said, "Where are your horns?" Could you believe in 1970? But that was a Bible Belt. And Violetta Rather, though, she belonged to a country club and she invited all of you to the country club. She's, "But you had such nice kids, and you and your husband, I could," and Daddy could not believe that anyone asked us where our horns were, but it's a Bible Belt. So that was Murray, Kentucky, and we were there for 3 weeks, and they were just absolutely wonderful, wonderful, wonderful to us. We made ice cream there. I'd never, one of the teachers had what I used to call a trailer, but it was a beautiful mobile home, and they put on a violin concert for us, and they invited us to Alice Kennedy. We made ice cream. We had a wonderful 3 weeks, but I couldn't believe, here we are in Danielson, so highly respected, the first Jewish family ever in Danielson.
Was your parents were the first Jewish family.
Right. Oh, yeah. And so that was really so shocking. But
and then what would you recommend to a young person entering education?
Well, you really need to love it, and you really need to love young people and care. Do you really care about it? You are not going to make very much money in teaching, so don't go into teaching for that reason. I mean, to think I got $46 a week and I paid Eva, the babysitter, $30. I had 16 and she had 30, but I had to report the $46. But I would say, you love people. Like right now, I love having young people all around me. They're all around here at the university, on both to the right and to the left of me, both sides.
And do you think that today women entering the workforce are better off than when women started working when you did, and why?
No question about it. No question about it. And the people who got the raises were the men, even though women were working even harder and taking on more of a responsibility at home. Most women did not have the cooperation of your father. He was way ahead of his time, way ahead of his time.
What about the Fetterman Amendment, or whatever they called it when you were teaching?
We decided, your father and I wanted more than the 2 children, and so we had gone to the doctor and said, we'd like to conceive in October and have the baby in the summertime.
Their relatives.
And Dr. Marcus said, "Man proposes and God disposes." And Daddy told him, "Well, Dr. Marcus, you do what you're supposed to do. We'll do what we're supposed to do." But I was chair of the Personnel Policies Committee, and they had voted to take all the contracts and put them in a safe deposit box. So that's what I did. So they were really after me more for they could get rid of me, get rid of their problems with the teachers. And so what happened is they told me that I had to leave in my 4th month of pregnancy. They passed the Fetterman Amendment. Any woman in her 4th month of pregnancy will have her contract terminated. So I brought in the Connecticut Education Association to the school board meeting, and there were 3 I's at that time: immorality, insubordination, and efficiency. They said, well, I was married. Well, now you don't have to be married anymore to have a baby. But so they said they could not make it retroactive. So they never put it in writing at all. They never adopted the policy because of the CEA. So Daddy said, you know what? David and Vita, they're 11 months apart. It'd be nice to have another one. And, you know, for next summer. I said, you gotta be joking. He said, no, we'll do that. Well, I tell you, so they didn't have a written policy. They never had that in writing. They never did adopt it. And so you were born, but summer school, I was finishing up one of my degrees the summer you were born, and summer school, you were due August 15th, and summer school was going to be over August the 8th. So, which was crazy. I never should have done it, but something I did. I drove from Danielson to Stores about 25 miles, and at Route 44 is a back curvy road. But you waited until the next day. Summer school's over August 7th. You were born August the 8th, and I went back to school September 8th. But one of the ways this changed is your Uncle Bernie got married in Florida in January that 55. And I asked the superintendent if I could have a few days off that I would pay for a substitute. And he said, absolutely not, because I'd like to spend more than 1 or 2 days in Florida. And he said, if you had your vacation in December, none of my business that your brother got married in January. If you're not here Monday morning, you don't have a job. So, and then they tried to get rid of me, so they would clock me in at 7 a.m. So before 7 o'clock in the morning, Daddy took in dry cleaning insurance in Moosup, and I would take them to the dry cleaners before 7 a.m. with 4 children under 6 years of age, and then go to school at night. But anyway, but you know, I look back, I don't know where I found the energy. It was your father. You had, he was way ahead of time. You know, we got married in 1950. Men were not taking children. They weren't changing diapers. They weren't getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Your father is the one I have to thank.
Do you want to talk about the time when Dad came to speak to my middle school class?
Yes, Judy thought it was rather unusual that her father was doing so much called changing roles of men and women. So Daddy said, what do you mean changing? Who changed the roles? Where's it written down that a father can't take care of children? He said, the only thing I haven't figured out yet, and if I knew how to do it, I wouldn't mind having a baby at all, instead of women having to do it. And he just said, he doesn't understand where everybody gets that idea. Where's it written down? This is what the woman does, and this is what the man does. You do what's comfortable for each of you as a couple. So people getting married or living together, they need to talk about that together, not that this is one who's going to do this, that, or the other thing. That, but right. Your father's like, I went to Washington for a year. The university asked me to do an intergovernmental personnel assignment to open up the first office of consumer education. And I said, oh, I don't think so. And Daddy said, I think that'd be wonderful. You'd be the head of consumer education for the whole country. I said, oh no. So there was a Ryan's Delicatessen that had opened up. And before I would go every week, I'd come home every weekend, I would write out a check to Ryan's. And so you could get bagel cream cheese and corned beef. So when I got back after the year, Ryan said, oh, there really is an Elsie Fetterman. I've been getting your checks every week, but he said, I never saw you. I said, right. But I received more honors than that I just did. I mean, I recently got an honor. I said, I've been working like this my whole life. So just because I made it through, you're giving me an award? I mean, what's the big deal? I mean, that's how I work.
So now we're going to change topics a little bit. Probably the one that a lot of people actually wanted to hear even more about, I imagine, is how you stay young despite your chronological age of 93.
Well, I write a lot of grant proposals, and I'm very involved with the temple in Danielson, the Temple Beth Israel. And we got it in the National Register of Historic Places. And you won't believe, but I got 2 grants from the Daughters of the American Revolution. And one of them was to work on the patio repair, and another one was to make a documentary of the whole history and Holocaust survivors and how the Christian community came and welcomed the Holocaust survivors. As a matter of fact, Henry Drobiaz, and you probably know Henry and Rosa Goldblatt, he needed $500 to complete buying his dairy farm. Who let him borrow $500? Stanton and Gap from the Baptist Church, let him borrow that $500. And Henry had no experience farming, and he didn't even know him. The other example is there's a dairy farm in Brooklyn by the name of Hugh Gorman. He wanted to donate money to help build the synagogue in Danielson. He auctioned off one of his calves to raise money, which meant he reduced his inventory. But then I don't just sit around. I do have, I don't know if you could see these dumbbells, and I have these dumbbells that every single day I go up and down in exercises, and I have a band here. I have things here.
And what else do you do to make yourself, feel younger than the 93 years old? Like, you're mentally as well.
Well, I don't know. Raise your hand.
Mahjong.
How many play Mahjong?
Well, do you play online now?
I play, yeah, it's called Real Mahjong online. You play with others, and Joyce, she plays Mahjong also. But I like doing a lot of research. That there's someone recently diagnosed with pancreatic cancer that I know, and I did all this research on housing assistance and food stamps. It's things I used to do with cooperative extension anyway. So I've been working with him and his family. They treated him for Lyme's disease, and they finally realized it's stage 4 pancreatic cancer. So I'm involved with doing a lot of research. I look up a lot of things, and I just wrote a grant proposal to the Humanities Council. We got a grant. We're doing a curriculum guide that's going to go with a documentary that will be available to all the schools so they can see the story of the Holocaust survivors and the Christian community welcoming the Jewish community in Danielson.
How did you hook up with that teacher who's writing the curriculum? How did you find that person?
Well, I found out this Rick McGinn told me his daughter's the best teacher she ever had at the high school was this Simon Lutz. So I just did cold turkey. I just went in there and I made an appointment and I told him about it, and he's very excited about it. And I said, and I need some other teachers. So I went to Fitness Together where I started my exercise. Now I have my own, since the virus, I have my own exercise stuff here. I have my massage table. But when I went to the fitness center for a personal trainer, I was telling, they always say, oh, Elsie, what are you up to now? What are you doing now? So I said, oh, I need a teacher who would use this film and the curriculum guide and so she says, oh, my husband's head of the social studies department at Holyoke High School. I said, oh, that's wonderful, because Holyoke is a Title I underprivileged school. And I knew they would love that one. So then I was going for therapy. I don't have, I want to try to stand up and sit down better than I do. So I was going to physical therapy. She said, oh, my husband's the head of the social studies department at this other school. So then I read in the paper that they're trying to get Holocaust education mandatory in Massachusetts. Already is in Connecticut. Stephen Armstrong was a speaker and told me that. So I called this woman up. I said, I see you testified. Would you be willing to teach? She said, oh, I'd love to teach with that film. So I got 4 teachers, not knowing any of them at all personally before. So I think people, if they start thinking about what is their objective, what are the different ways they could collect that they can get the job done.
So it sounds like, and I knew the answer already, of course, but it sounds like one of the ways that you are able to stay young is you got to have a little chutzpah, because to make an appointment or ask for an appointment at a high school, And that was a couple years ago. So, okay, maybe you were 90. And to say, yeah, I want an appointment and this is my idea, and not knowing whether they would actually go for it or not. But you took a chance and they said yes.
Well, not only that, I think everyone should have a passion or interest. A lot of people, once they retire, whatever that age is, they haven't developed something else that they're really excited about. You know, like the temple, the fact that this temple where your sister was the first wedding there, your brother, your Uncle Meyer was the first bar mitzvah there, and Robin was married there last year. Right. That, could you ever know of any synagogue or house of worship anywhere in the country that has no congregation and has that building going and looking great all the time? At Passover Seder, there's 100 people at the Seder when we didn't have the virus. 20 might be Jewish and 80 Christian.
Right.
The same thing with the Thanksgiving interfaith service. 100 people, 15 or 20 Jewish people. And I mean, it's amazing. I wish the whole world would look at that kind of getting together and helping each other out. I mean, so I was traveling before the virus, and I was on the board. I was traveling 3 hours, an hour and a half each way from Amherst to go to Danielson to the board meetings.
Right, right. So what other things, do you do online, Mom? Like obviously, this Zoom call, but what other technologies do you use either on the computer, like a video like this, or online banking or Skype? Do you do?
I do the banking. I have Quicken program. I have an accountant, but what I did to the account are all my expenses and income, and I do that. And as you might personally know, Judy's son, Max, is a paralegal. He graduated as a paralegal. And so I go online and I find, I put down entry level paralegal. And I just sent you one today in Old Saybrook, Connecticut.
Mom, I got it. but like, do you use Skype? And who do you Skype?
Well, I use Zoom with Alana in Israel. We do a lot of Zoom. We did Skyping, but now every Tuesday morning I Zoom with a granddaughter in Israel, and then we've had my birthday party, and we've had get-togethers. And Mother's Day, it's all on Zoom. So
you do, and you have an iPhone, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah, and I find out that people are better with text messages today than the email. So I get a response a lot faster if I send them a text message.
That's pretty amazing. So I think people have a pretty good idea of how you're able to stay 93 years young as opposed to 93 years old. So do you have other things that you want to share, or should we open it up to questions?
I'd like to see what people's questions are.
All right. So I don't see any questions right now in the chat. But
it's my brother. My brother's on.
Okay. Uncle Morty, go ahead. Yeah. I don't know if you're muted. Okay, go ahead.
It's very difficult being Elsie's younger brother, because she and Miriam got all A's. And I was an average student.
Uncle Morty.
But I want to do an infomercial for the Kinley Historical Society. They did Natalie LaFancy did that, and it's really different historic.
Uncle Morty, if you can do me a favor,
can you see it?
Email me or put it in the chat and I'll be able to say what you said because we're not able to hear you clearly.
So anyway,
I'm gonna see if somebody else wants to talk right now, but email me or write me a note. Is there anybody else right now that wants to talk?
oh, okay. Okay.
Email me.
Okay.
All right. Does anybody else have questions for Mom? No?
I think,
Okay, Dan Bender does. Go ahead, Dan.
No real question, just a comment. I'm sitting here having supper and going, oh my gosh, she's amazing. Oh my gosh. I mean, good heavenly days. And I want to congratulate you, Judy, on picking your genes very well.
I've got a lot to live up to, I think. So I've got quite the challenge there.
Yeah.
But thank
Amazing.
you, Dan.
Amazing and very impressive.
Thanks,
Mazel
Dan.
tov to you, man.
Uncle Molly wanted to say.
I would like to say hello to Elsie. This is Evelyn.
Evelyn, yeah.
God bless you. I love you. As 93 years old, I know that. You are a remarkable woman. And Judy, you're following in her footsteps. It's so nice tonight to see your family. And
Thank
I
you.
to say hello to them tonight.
Thank
Elsie,
you.
God bless. And many, I'm 93 too. Many, many more years.
November 11th. Your birthday's
You've got a remarkable memory, and I know yours also. Elsie, we had
All right.
Elsie, we've
Wonderful.
had some wonderful times together, and I'll remember them for a long time. Thank you, love.
Chuck, did you have something?
Yeah, Elsie, do you have anything to tell us about your thoughts about feminism?
My older daughter, Judy, said, my mother never needed women's lib. She was liberated from the day she was born. You know, so I don't think people need to use that as a reason for losing a job or not getting a job or whatever. I've always felt that you're worth your salt and you don't need to talk about feminism. My older daughters always said, my mother never needed to be liberated. She liberated herself. And I think I gave a talk, my Vita's children graduated from the day school in Orange, near New Haven. They moved to New Haven because the Hebrew school, the day school in Norwich had closed and they moved. And I was a speaker at one of my granddaughter's graduations. And I said, I know that many of you from Orthodox families have been brought up that you go to seminary for a year and you get married and you have children. And Rabbi Edelman, who's here, I had talked to his daughter and I said, so what are your plans? She said, I'm going to go for 1 year seminary. My parents will arrange my marriage. I gave that talk to this Orthodox group. And I said, every one of you should get your education. You could be happily married. It's fine, happily married. But every one of you should be able to earn your own livelihood. God should forbid anything should happen. And it had nothing to do with being feminism or anything else. It's a matter of, this is what every woman and every man, you know, I love community colleges and technical schools. And before Bill Cosby got into trouble, I used to admire him because he went into Springfield with Black kids and said, get off your butt and do your homework. And this is what you need to do. And I will say that I had a pretty strong taskmaster growing up. I wrote
Your father. Your father.
My father. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about work ethic. I mean, but is your question about feminism? I don't think that I'm not one of those who go out and raises the flag about it. I think I knew what Uncle Marty wanted to mention is about the Historical Society. We have the history of our family, and I spent a lot of time doing the research on the family.
Hey, Mom.
So we,
Hey,
so we
Mom.
also, oh yeah, go ahead, David.
Sorry. Yeah, I have to run soon, but I wanted to just see, do you remember when you were giving a radio spot about the temple, could you tell them about that student for that many years ago who remembered you?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, see, the picture, I was doing that over in Putnam, WINY, and it was a call-in show. And this student who I had in 1965 at Plainfield High, she called in. She said, I came from a dysfunctional family, Mrs. Fetterman, and the kids were poked. And she said, you sat us all down and you straightened out those other kids. And she said that I'll never forget that. And I told my children, if they ever treated another human being, that I will take everything away from them. But from 1965, that she would even remember, it's just been amazing, the relationships, that we've had. You remember some other stories?
So,
It was a tribute to that a student will remember you for that many years ago, that you were that helpful and that personally involved. Beautiful.
So Mom, we also have another question in the chat that they want me to ask. Can your mom share her experience on how she got her job on TV? I never knew she was on TV. How exciting. And I think that's from Kirk's sister, Fran.
Yeah, hi, Elsie. I'm here. Yeah, just wanted to say you're truly an amazing role model, and I'm really enjoying, your talk. And so just curious, I never knew you were on TV. How exciting.
Oh, for about 15 years, 15 years in Hartford. Well, one of the...
How did you get that job? How did you get to go on TV though?
Well, I did a lot of television work. We had a television center at the University of Connecticut. As a matter of fact, David was teaching at Stanford, and he was with me at UConn, and he taught his classes way back when, 1960s and 70. He taught his Stanford classes from UConn. So I did a lot of work. We were discussing consumer problems with all the community action agencies, and the university has a wonderful interactive television. And Stan Quinn, who was the director, we had classes probably in about 80 or 90 spots, like even grocery stores and telephone offices and everywhere. So Stan Quinn said, what you're teaching over television here at UConn is you should do that. And he taped me from his studio, and they liked it in New Haven and in Hartford, Channel 3 and Channel 8, and it's called Speaking for the Consumer. And
wasn't it on public television?
Oh yeah, that's how I met Glenn Woods. I were public television was they had I think four or six different channels, so we were all over the state. So
it was at 8. What wasn't it? At 8 o'clock in the morning and 2 a.m. Right?
No, it was also on Sunday. On Sunday at 1 o'clock, and my aunt Bessie from New London, she wrote to them and she said, my niece has a doctorate. She said, I think you better make sure you include her title, Dr. Fetterman. And I never told people, the community action agencies in Connecticut or anywhere, that I had a PhD, because I figured if they ever knew I had a PhD, they figured that you're in the ivory tower, you wouldn't know about their problems, their consumer problems. And so I had a secretary, Mrs. Palermo. She was a secretary to this other person, Paul Nuttall, who did not have a PhD.
Right.
And she'd be so upset, I would not let her answer the phone, Dr. Fetterman. And I said, no, Mrs. Fetterman. And he would not correct. In those days, we had a secretary, and she said, they'd asked for Dr. Nuttall. So she finally got upset. She said, there was no Dr. Nuttall here. There is a Mr. Nuttall here. Because I wouldn't let her, because I felt I would lose my rapport with the low income, all the community action agencies.
Why don't you tell everybody about Gary Taylor?
Well, because I work with all the community action agencies, there was someone, Gary Taylor's mother was the head of the agency, And so I was with all these 14 agencies going over all the consumer laws and training them. So one fine day, her son, and Gary Taylor is black family. One fine day, Gary Taylor comes to E.O. Smith School, the high school where all of you were going to school. And he shows up and he tells his brother was a star at the UConn basketball team at that time. And he tells Al Nichols, the coach, that he wants to be on the basketball team. And he says, where you live? He said, I live with the Fettermans. And David came home, he said, is there another Fetterman family in Manson? I didn't even know. And so Gary shared David's. We had 5 bedrooms, but each of you had your own bedroom. So Gary Taylor shared the room with David. But then I never knew whether he's coming home or not going home. So he finally went to the campus. But every time when you were small and you see someone black, you say, that's scary, that's scary, that's scary, because we didn't have any black people in Johnson, and E.O. Smith didn't have very many. I think he was like, there are 2 black students or 3 black students in school. So I said, yeah, okay. He said, here, and that's it. But you have to tell me if you're not coming home at night. I need to know that. I don't have to worry all night long. But he showed up out of the blue, and, so so that's an experience that the 4 children, the 4 of you had.
I thought you told his mom that he could come and live with us.
Oh, no, I never did. No.
All right, glad we got that straight.
No.
I didn't know that.
It took all these years. No, I never did. We had all we could do to have 4 of you.
So are there any other questions or comments? I didn't want to steal the show here and monopolize.
Can you hear
everything.
me?
What?
Oh, Connie McKenna's on.
Hi, Connie.
Hi there. I've been sitting here listening, and what I asked Elsie yesterday or today, I forget, time flies. I said, if I listen and sit in on this call, am I going to learn any secrets I don't already know? Because I followed Elsie along. We've known each other. We grew up in the same small town, for those of you who don't know. And Elsie, what I wanted to say, and I'm not as good at this, I tried to send you a chat, and I got it. The words are up here, and I haven't managed to send it to you. But what I was I'll say now what I wanted to say. What nobody could say probably as directly as I can. Elsie is a fabulous role model. When we were growing up, I knew her, but casually. But through the years and professionally, we started working both in home economics way back when, and we would go to the same regional meetings, and we would follow along. Well, I don't remember as much detail about that, but what I wanted to say, when she was working on her doctorate, she talked me into going into Plainfield, where she had been teaching. She needed to have her semester of residency, so she needed to find somebody to take her place, and the school wasn't going to help her at all. And I had just had another baby, so she came over and said, the baby will be very small at that time. It wouldn't be that hard for you. You could come and teach for me so I could get my residency. So she came along, and she did that, and I did that, and she got her residency and her degree. And then she had been in Plainfield for a short time, and a couple years, and then she was going to go on. She'd been offered a job. She went to Willimantic, and she didn't know, how can she leave? She hasn't been in Plainfield that long. And then so she goes on, and I follow her. I took the job full time, and things are a little different then. You didn't have to go through all the search committees you do now. Then she went to Willimantic. She was in Willimantic, started a lot of new programs. One of her secrets of success is boundless energy and lots of ideas. And she's very good at finding people to help. And she sort of wrote me into some of this. But then I applied for her job when she didn't want to go to UConn, to the university job, because she'd only been in Willimantic 1 year. And so I encouraged her to go, and she always says, Elsie, what do you say when I say about you're going? Do you remember? Do you remember?
Mom?
I'm going, where I'm going, you mean? Oh, we started 7 courses that year, in that 1 year. Oh, you said, Elsie, it won't be very fair to me if you don't take that job at UConn, because how will I ever be a supervisor, city supervisor, if you don't take that job? It's not fair to me. And I had started 7 wage earning courses in that 1 year, 7 new courses. And then we started other things. And when I left, the principal said, I suppose she'll be running that place on the hill at UConn the way she's running here for 1 year. So the only reason I ever left the high school to go to UConn was Connie said, it's not fair. It's not fair to me if you don't take it. So, and Connie and I were involved, I have to tell you, in a national adult family care organization of caregivers. And you could get paid for taking care of your elder parent or someone in your own home, $1,500 a month, income tax free. So Connie and I were highly involved. I was president, and we were very, very involved in that as well. Yeah, Connie's the one, and Connie took my place, Killingly High, and then when I left Killingly High, and I went to Plainfield, and then she went to Plainfield, and then I left Plainfield, and then I went to Willimantic, and she went there. So we've been in touch and you took care of Judy's cat when we went to Canada that time too, Connie. Remember?
She's still on mute.
Oh, okay.
There she goes. Whoops. I'm sorry, Connie, we can't hear you because you're still on mute.
Well,
Oh, there you are.
Anyway, hopefully she'll come back. So one of our congregants, Nadine, told me that Helen Chambers was the dean, of course, of the School of Home Economics when she was at UConn, and she remembers meeting Helen Chambers a few times. So that's kind of cool. And Nadine's on the Zoom.
okay, am I back? Am I
Yes,
back?
now you're back, Connie.
Okay, I'll finish this little piece rather quickly, because she was my role model in many ways, because she kept going on and doing those things. And when she was working on her doctorate, and I would say to myself, and I had no idea of doing that, by the way, one of the things you had to do for a doctorate is pass a language exam. And so most of the students who didn't know another language had to learn one. Well, I happen to know French already. So I went over to Elsie's. I was just visiting, and she said, oh, the university's giving their language exam today. Why don't you take it? And I said, but I'm not prepared. I didn't plan on taking it. And she says, well, and then she says, that's, you're here, you might as well do it. So I said, well, I'll just take it because then I'll learn what I need to study, right? But much to my surprise, I passed it. But anyway, the thing is, then I was saying, well, she's got 4 children. She's going on and she's doing all these courses. If she can do it, I can do it. And what I wanted to say is I did, of course, and I done a lot since. But at the same time, for lots of the kids that worked with her or were benefited by being in her class, she did a lot to encourage them. And I don't think she or anybody here knows the extent to which people have done things because of the encouragement that she gave them. And I'm just one case in point, because I took that ball and I really ran with it. But I thank you, Elsie, and I think that people ought to know that you don't only do things that are pleasing to you, but you do a lot of things in a very personal way that help people get motivated to do things.
Thank you so much for sharing all that, Connie. And then Nancy, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I did. I just want to say I feel like Elsie is kind of our version of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And
What a compliment.
yes, and it's meant to be a compliment because you really have accomplished so much. And just quickly, I think you've been a role model for so many. And I'm wondering if you had someone that was kind of like your role model, or did it all just start with you?
I would say that I've had so many people who've helped me along the way. Dr. Pritzker was my major advisor at the University of Connecticut. And when I took my master's degree, I took the Miller Analogies test. And the way Connie said I encouraged her.
Mom, I can't hear you. Mom?
Yeah, okay, let me see. I had to press the button here.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, I must move this.
Okay, so Dr. Pritzkow, but what about your mom? She was a working mom.
My mother worked, she never made it to the hospital with my sister and me because she was working in a hardware store, and she wanted the clerk, Henry Sharon, to finish waiting on the customer before she would go. She's finished waiting on the customer.
Before she delivered you.
Yes, and
You're referring to.
made it to the hospital with Aunt Miriam and me. We were born on Winter Street, and my mother would get up on the ladder, on a tall ladder that goes right to the ceiling, and she'd be ready to deliver. She'd be up there and come down on the ladder, and so. But she was very generous and very kind. We had a Mr. Glassman, like a salesman, that he would always come to the house, and she'd make him scrambled eggs and pumpernickel bread and coffee, and then give him money for the bus to go to Providence, go somewhere else. And then in the hardware store, there was a young boy looking at the bicycles, and my mother said, "I bet you could sell a lot more. I sell a lot more papers." And oh yes, so my mother did not make him wait until he paid for it. She let him have the bicycle with a time payment book. And I saw him at a high school reunion, Wilfred Comtois, and he told me about my mother letting him have that bicycle so he could sell more than that.
You remember his name, and how old were you?
Yeah, I remember.
You were probably 10 or 12 or something at the most.
Oh, that's all. Yeah, that's all it was. What I remember, I may not remember if I go pretty far from my family room, which is pretty far from the other end of the house. If I'm thinking about something else, if I get to that refrigerator, I do have to stop and say, now, what did I come in here for? Because I had so many thoughts between this room and the kitchen.
Your mind is going so fast, something falls out for a second. But I think that happens to most of us on this Zoom call. So you're not alone. And
Judy, I don't want to cut off the discussion. No. I have to leave to go to another meeting, but I did want to thank both you and your mother for putting on such an incredible program. You're really quite the power mom and daughter duo here. So I'm going to make you host, and thank you so much. Really, really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much, Kathleen. All right. Do we have other questions? Oh, I see a hand. Was that Seema? Just unmute.
Yeah, I have to go to another meeting as well, but I just wanted to thank you and particularly your mom. This was wonderful. It was wonderful meeting you, Mrs. Fetterman, and I hope maybe to do it sometime in person.
Well, this will be over. We're all going to get vaccinated and life is going to be fine.
Thank you and good night.
Thanks, Seema. Mom always looks at the cup as half full, and she's done that even despite the pandemic. Ed, I see, are you saying goodbye or do you want to talk? If you want to talk, you have to unmute, Ed.
Oh, now that's another way to stay young, Judy. Go online and find a friend who drives at night and I know him.
Hi, Ed.
Hi, Judy. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Your mother is a very, very talented and I had another word, but I can't think of it.
To be reckoned with?
Very driven woman. Once she gets her mind going on to doing something, there's nothing going to stop her.
Ed, do you want to talk about how you and Mom met?
Your mother does a better job than I do.
Okay, Mom, do you want to talk about how you and Ed met?
Well, he was looking for someone loquacious, and he said no woman answered his ad because they didn't know what loquacious meant. And as all of you now know, I am very, very loquacious, and I was looking for someone who would drive at night on no meds. And he drives at night and he's on no meds. And we've gone on some, and he loves to dance, and we go dancing in Connecticut at the Nutmeg before the virus at the Nutmeg restaurant. We went dancing. It's an 18-piece band,
So you met online, how many years ago?
5 years ago, so I was
I'll make it 6 now. It's
6
always been 5, no matter how long ago.
So Mom, what was the dating site that did the trick?
She did what?
I think
What
Match,
dating?
there's Match.com.
Okay,
Yeah,
And
all right.
I made a mistake to put my name in, and your mother picked it up.
You sure you want to say that, Ed? I think you better take that one back. You're gonna get yourself in big trouble.
I'm
We
always
met-
in trouble, just ask her.
You got half the Blumenthal and Fetterman family on the Zoom call,
You know?
so be careful. All right, other questions?
We have a good time together. She's a great lady. And we go all over the place with her.
Yep,
The latest place has been Sutton Cross. Have you been there?
I haven't been there yet because I don't know about the indoor dining thing.
We'll
But
have to take you out there. Your mother loves it there.
sure, I'll go on a date when I have the shot in my arm and you do too. Do we have other comments, or should we let everybody go to Minion for Bethel Minion? We're allowed to go over if we have other questions, but I think we're good. I don't see hands. Oh, Lois, you have to unmute though. I can't hear you yet, Lois.
No, it's me, Bonnie.
Oh, I just saw,
Syacet.
okay.
Oh, well,
No, I
Lois could
saw-
go first. It's okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say happy Hanukkah. Great to see you. Always great to hear Elsie's stories, and we love you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I saw Lois's hand up, and that's why I thought Lois wanted to talk. And then I looked down and I saw you talking, so it's all good.
Yeah, I have to unmute, right?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Elsie, hats off to you. You are amazing. I am really, really impressed. Always. Lots of good luck. Mazel tov in everything you do.
Well,
You're
you knew my husband before I did, right?
Yeah, Uncle Irving. I used to would pretend as a little kid that he was my boyfriend.
He lived with you, and did you worked at the shipyard with
In Maryland, yes.
Marilyn and Jimmy Yespa?
So Lois and Bonnie are my cousins. So if you didn't already figure that out, and they live in New York. So I want to say thank you for everybody who logged on to the Zoom call tonight, and we had a great time. Rosa, were you saying goodbye, or did you have your hand up? I don't know. Okay, I think it's a goodbye. All right. All right, very good. Thank you, everybody, so much. We had a great time, and
Happy Hanukkah.
yes, happy Hanukkah. Thank you, Ed. Happy Hanukkah to everyone. Take care. All
Thank
right.
you so much. And everyone will still on next week, every Wednesday, 6:30. We have great people, great talkers. Come and join us.
Yep. And
Thank you very much, both of you. Love to you all.
All right. Take care.
I just love reminiscing.
All right. Thank you, Mom. I'm gonna sign off for now.
Okay, love you. Love you all.
Love you too. Bye-bye.
Oh, that was a treat. That was a treat. Because see, I know the whole family. In fact, I'm part of their family, actually.